Oh man, my brain feels like it's popping out of my head. Hey, Ghoulash here. It's been a while, I think. When you're undead like me, you lose track of time pretty easily. My creator, Dr. Wolfula, noticed that Valentine's Day was fast approaching, and saw a way to make a quick buck. To my creator, every holiday is a total scam, and if he can find a way to get a slice of that pie, he will. So, Dr. Wolfula decided that I should review My Bloody Valentine. Both of them. There's a remake, you know. Of course there's a remake. The reason why Dr. Wolfula is having me review My Bloody Valentine instead of just reviewing it himself is because he's getting pretty tired of reviewing horror movies all the time. He needs a break from it, apparently. If Dr. Wolfula had it his way, he'd just review every episode of MASH in reverse order. So I guess I should probably start reviewing the original My Bloody Valentine. Maybe.
Just fucking do it already!
Oh, okay. My Bloody Valentine is a movie where a guy stabs people.
More specific, please.
My Bloody Valentine is a movie where a miner stabs Canadians.
Details, Ghoulash. The audience wants to hear details about the movie.
My Bloody Valentine starts with two miners walking through a mine shaft and...
Ghoulash, don't give me a synopsis of the movie. Review the movie.
My Bloody Valentine. Released in 1981, My Bloody Valentine tells the story of a small town...
Why the fuck are you talking like that?
I don't know, I thought I'd just change things up a bit.
Well, stop it. Nobody likes it.
Valentine's Day is coming up in the town of Valentine Bluffs. Ironically, Valentine's Day hasn't been openly celebrated in Valentine Bluffs for 20 years.
After all, the first Valentine's dance in 20 years has to be something special.
There's a perfectly reasonable reason for this. The backstory is, of course, explained by the old, crazy exposition bartender that nobody listens to.
I know what I'm talking about. I'm telling you now. This town is accursed. Now, it started 20 years ago.
Back in 1960, there was a dance on Valentine's Day. I know because it said so on the cake. Meanwhile, at the local mine, two supervisors leave early to check out the dance. Unfortunately, the supervisors didn't explosion-proof the mine before they left, resulting in a cave-in. 5 men were left buried underneath the rubble for weeks, far away from their television sets. Oh, and I guess their families, too. Eventually, only one of the miners, Harry Warden, was rescued. Cannibalism always makes a rescue kind of awkward. Harry ended up in a mental asylum, but how effective are asylums at actually curing anybody in fiction? Not at all. Harry gets out a year later and takes his revenge on the two supervisors that didn't supervise him. You'd think that would logically be the end of it, but no. Harry also demanded that there must never be another Valentine's Day dance ever again.
Inside was a note. A warning from Harry. Never to hold a Valentine's dance ever again.
Oh no, not the Valentine's Day dance! It's not like they can't have a dance on the day after Valentine's Day or something. Honestly, Harry Warden's backstory is pretty similar to Pamela Voorhees' backstory if you think about it.
The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned.
Whatever, Harry's backstory is alright and it's told pretty well. The makers of My Bloody Valentine had to figure out some way for Valentine's Day to be connected with a mine setting, and they did fine. The connection is tenuous, but that can't be helped. It was 1981, slasher movies were just taking off, and you kinda had to have a holiday title to be a big hit. My Bloody Valentine was originally going to be called The Secret. That's not a very interesting title, so you kinda have to have Valentine's Day in your movie about a killer miner. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just business after all. 2-minute origin aside, My Bloody Valentine's story is familiar territory. Valentine Bluffs is having their first Valentine's Day dance in decades. Harry Warden catches wind of these plans and commits some preemptive murders warning against the dance. The guy is pretty persuasive when he gives the sheriff and mayor a Valentine's Day heart that actually came out of somebody's body. It's a thoughtful gesture, but it's kinda like giving somebody a box of chocolates that have coconut on them. Nobody's gonna eat that. The dance is canceled without much of a reason. According to the sheriff, they don't want to ruin the town's reputation by saying outright that there won't be a dance because there's a man in a miner outfit ripping hearts out.
Yeah, that's not gonna look good on a brochure.
The local teens rebel against the cancellation of the dance by holding a party near the mine where it all began. Harry was never one to respect a good loophole, so he makes good on his promise of kicking ass and taking hearts. Luckily for Harry, some of the kids decide to hang out within the actual mine because it's Canada, come on, what else are you gonna do? It's gotta be a real high for slasher villains when their prey willingly enters dark, cold, labyrinthine locations where they can easily be cornered. Before the murders really start to pick up in pace, My Bloody Valentine establishes a love triangle subplot involving the main characters TJ, Sarah, and Axel. Not Axel Foley. TJ had left Valentine Bluffs for years and returns to find his ex-girlfriend Sarah in a relationship with his friend Axel. Where TJ was for years and what he was doing is never explained. It builds TJ up as a pretty mysterious figure with uncertain motivations, but it turns out in the end that that side of TJ's character isn't very important.
What did you call?
I wanted to believe me, but I couldn't. I mean, I really fell on my ass out there. I made so many mistakes, but I learned something.
The love triangle is actually pretty interesting because of how realistically confused it is. TJ and Axel are constantly beating the shit out of each other over Sarah. It's easy to get just as sick of them as Sarah does.
Did you please stop it? I just don't care anymore. Just leave me alone.
TJ and Axel are morons. They never get the hint that a brawling backstabber is the last person anybody would want to get into a relationship with. Once everyone gets into that mine, the romance angle becomes irrelevant, but it was a nice way to not only get to know the main characters, but also the supporting characters. There was one small element of the story that added quite a bit of pathos to two minor characters. There's a character named Mabel who was organizing the Valentine's Day dance. She gets brutally murdered and the sheriff finds her body stuffed in a dryer. This is sort of sad by itself because she seemed like a nice lady. Later in the movie, the sheriff receives a Valentine box. The guy expects the box to have another freshly torn out human heart inside it, but no, just chocolates reside within. However, it turns out that these chocolates were sent by the now deceased Mabel. In a way, this is worse for the sheriff because it means a woman that loved him is now a desecrated corpse, adding another dimension to a character that could have just been a throwaway sheriff with no motivation.
Okay, could you stop with the serious shit and get to the fucking kills already, Ghoulash? Sheesh.
Okay, as you wish. The murders in My Bloody Valentine are pretty awesome. The death scenes definitely give Friday the 13th a run for its money in both creativity and detail. Mabel's corpse is a good example of how gross the gore can get, but then you'll also have some inventive kills like a girl getting her head impaled on a faucet. The hot dog water drowning stands out as the only particularly weak death scene. Besides that, My Bloody Valentine has some outstanding gore effects. That is, if you're watching the unrated version. In order for My Bloody Valentine to receive an R rating instead of that dreaded X rating, every death scene in the movie needed to be trimmed down. The distributor, Paramount, got a lot of heat for releasing the controversially violent Friday the 13th a year prior, so they were more than willing to appease the MPAA's demands for a less gory movie. George Mahalka, the director of My Bloody Valentine, believes that another reason for the MPAA's censorship of the movie was due to John Lennon's then recent murder. Violence in movies after that was a no-no. Whenever something terrible happens, you gotta blame it on art. It makes perfect sense every time. So My Bloody Valentine got cuts, and it got cuts really bad. For decades, the neutered theatrical version was the only way you could see My Bloody Valentine until 2009, when a new unrated version of the film was released that included 3 minutes of cut material. Those 3 minutes add a lot to My Bloody Valentine. If you haven't seen it uncut, you haven't seen it at all.
Did you seriously just reference the Star Wars Special Edition trailer?
No, I didn't. An unfortunate downside to the cut sequences is that they aren't as well preserved as the rest of the movie. Most of the movie has a clean picture quality, but then suddenly you'll get to something that was cut, and it'll look grainy and dark. It's not a big deal, but it can be slightly jarring. If you've ever seen the 2010 edition of Metropolis, you'll know what I'm talking about. You have seen the 2010 edition of Metropolis, haven't you? My Bloody Valentine isn't particularly suspenseful until it gets to the mine. Only about a third of the movie is spent in that mine, but it's a third well spent because the mine has a nice atmosphere to it. Of course it's claustrophobic, but it also seems gigantic at the same time. Like there's no hope of finding your way out of this place. It's a great horror movie setting that's used effectively, even if it isn't very relatable. I mean, how often do you find yourself hanging out in a mine personally unless you're a miner? Or a crazy person? If you're really into nudity in slasher films, you're going to be really disappointed with this particular movie. My Bloody Valentine has no sex scenes or even nudity for that matter. The closest thing is a woman showing a bit of skin when she takes off her miner outfit at the beginning of the movie. If you have a fetish for miners, this movie's got you covered. You fucking weirdo. My Bloody Valentine is a slasher movie, so it isn't much of a showcase for acting. That said, the acting in the movie is definitely above average for a slasher film. Nobody blew me away, and nobody was terrible. A lot of the actors have Canadian accents, so if you're afraid of Canadians, you might want to skip this movie.
I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry.
I gotta hand it to Paul Kellman, Lori Hallier, and Neil Affleck for delivering some pretty believable performances during the lovers' squabbles.
Tell him.
Tell me what?
She wants to come back with me.
Bullshit, man.
Why don't you both just back off?
Way to go, guys. If you're anything like me, when you're watching a slasher movie, you'll find yourself liking a character for really stupid reasons. For instance, I like this guy named Hollis just because of his mustache. I mean, look at that thing. My Bloody Valentine's score by Paul Zaza isn't very memorable. There's no iconic theme attached to the movie, just some serviceable atmospheric music that you'd hear in any slasher movie at the time. The film does end with a nice song that retells the legend of Harry Warden.
A legend began. Every woman and man would always remember the time.
It's a good song, but you're not gonna be humming it. Maybe. If you don't want it spoiled, skip to this time code for my final verdict. I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. Alright, I think that's enough time. After a cool fight sequence on a moving minecart, My Bloody Valentine whips out a twist ending. I was actually pretty surprised by it. I sort of caught on to what the twist would probably be in the moments leading up to it, but it was still a surprising realization. It turns out that the killer dressed in miner gear isn't Harry Warden at all. I suspected that there would be a surprise killer, but I expected it to be TJ. After all, the guy is pretty suspicious. He wears an ascot. What is this, Scooby-Doo? In reality, the killer is Axel, Sarah's sort of, but not really boyfriend. It was a decent reveal, but it doesn't make much sense. When Axel was a kid, he saw his dad murdered by Harry Warden. For some reason, Axel decided to continue the work of the guy who killed his dad. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, all you can really say about Axel's motivations is that he's crazy. Axel gets trapped under some debris like Harry Warden before him, but the boy escapes by cutting his arm off. Axel runs off into the dark mine, never to be seen again until the sequel that was never made.
Harry, I'm coming. This whole fucking town is going to die. We're coming back, you bastards.
I'm honestly surprised that there wasn't an actual sequel to My Bloody Valentine. I'm sure the movie was made with sequels in mind, but I guess Paramount couldn't handle more than one slasher movie franchise. It would have been neat to see at least one sequel to My Bloody Valentine, but it's okay as a standalone movie, I guess. My Bloody Valentine is an entertaining slasher film with some excellent kills and pretty good characterization. It follows the slasher film formula very closely. The film is not as well known as some of its contemporaries, unfortunately, because it didn't bring anything new to the table, but what it does bring is worth checking out. What would you rate My Bloody Valentine, Dr. Wolfila?
I give it a TJ's ascot out of Hollis's mustache.
Really? That seems kinda low.
Don't you dare question my ratings. They're definitive. Infallible. Now go watch the fucking remake.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Ralph. Oh, the first time I tried to snort coke, man, and I almost drowned.
seen the 2010 edition of Metropolis, haven't you?